everybody. Welcome back to Tubby Talk. I am Terry from Terry Leahy Films, and with me are the guys from Where We Are, Tubby Robot.
I'm Chris.
I'm Steve.
And today we are going to talk about something that is long lost, which is the classic gaming arcade. Yes. For our generation, arcades were a big deal. It was a place to meet and talk video games and play video games with other people. There's a place for that now. It's called Tubby Robot. Here in Manioc. By the way, it's a Philadelphia show. We didn't mention that last time. I want to let you know that this is a show about talking games and things like that here in the Philadelphia area. Topic, arcades. Here we go.
Yeah, so we love the hell out of arcades. It's kind of the basis of our friendship in grade school and college and high school.
And also our business partnership is kind of why we wanted to open this place, because we have arcade games on tap.
Yep. But arcades, I mean, we went there every day after school, and we didn't have much money. We'd have like our $1 a day. It wasn't every day, but like you spend that $1 and you try to make it last. And we would go and play Street Fighter, and you know,
which Street Fighter?
Which one haven't we played in the arcade?
Favorite of all time is Street Fighter versus Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that one.
Or was it just X-Men?
Well, first there was X-Men, and then there was Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter.
It was the second crossover game.
Yeah.
So this is before Marvel vs. Capcom hit, right?
Yeah.
Probably right before.
The direct predecessor.
Yeah.
God.
So it was the second in the crossover series. Marvel vs. Capcom was the third, and then it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and on and on and on.
And now we're at the Marvel vs. Capcom 4.
Yes, very
which
soon.
sadly,
20 years later.
Sadly, though, will not be in an arcade because they're kind of gone.
You're right. And the third one was never in an arcade.
Oh,
I mean, we could.
Yeah, we could make it happen.
Here.
That's
have you guys ever built a cabinet? Do you know anything about that?
Not yet. That would be a really cool thing to do if we ever have free time.
Yeah, I would love to. Like anything other than like the hardware would be easy. I would love to do that part. I'm not much of a woodworker yet. That's something I'd love to learn how to do.
We've done woodworking though.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's wood.
Yeah, there's some wood.
I mean, we were in stage crew in high school.
Yeah.
Though we mostly talked about video games. Of course. Didn't pay much attention to stage crew craft, but
we missed that standing, like, upright sort of.
Yeah.
It was a social gathering place.
And it was good for you. You had to stand. You couldn't hunch. Well, you could.
Well, you hunched
but
instead.
You had to stand up. I just remember 3 buttons on the top, 3 buttons on the bottom, and that joystick. And it was perfect. It was a perfect way to play a fighting game. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that's what I think of the most in the arcades was those fighters. But in addition to that, the cool thing about arcades was it wasn't all just controller based. Like there were big honking guns and there was all sorts of interesting stuff. And it was just a great place to be in the 90s and
Time Crisis and LA Machine Guns.
Yeah.
Had one of those big giant guns on it.
Yeah, I mean, they actually started branching out into that stuff as arcades started to die because the consoles were getting more and more powerful. So then they were like, we need to differentiate ourselves. How do we do that? Oh, they can't do these giant guns, these giant installations. That's when DDR rose to prominence.
Oh,
and,
man.
Guitar Freaks, the predecessor to Guitar Hero spiritually. Games like that you really couldn't do at home.
Yeah, the interesting thing, now I will admit I was never in the arcade scene, so to speak. But it was, if we were going to the mall, if it was a family trip, I was gonna have at least $2 in quarters with me.
Yeah.
Because it was just a thing that you had to go and do, and it was so much fun, and it's really sad to see them kind of go away. But at the same time, I remember that time period, the mid-2000s, where all of a sudden, everything at home was looking much, much better. And online started.
Yeah.
Think about that online gaming probably is responsible for a lot of the death of the arcade.
You're right. I mean, a lot of the community stuff, I guess, got funneled into that, which is not the same.
Yeah.
It's better in a lot of ways and worse in others.
Yeah, the only communities that really held together through that transition would be the fighting game community, because they still have a lot of events where they get together and use the newer consoles to play competitively, like EVO, which happens the weekend of July 15th this year. And there's also a lot of online interaction that gets translated to meeting for the first time at these national events.
Yeah, it's a lot of people who have maybe played each other online or watched their streams, but you never met them in person. Then you go to EVO and it's like, oh, hey, this guy, I played him 100 times.
Yeah.
Now I know what you look like.
See, that's interesting because you remember the courage it took to put your quarters up there of I'm going to take you on and I'm going to try and beat you so that you have to leave the machine or put in more money. That's a big dig, man, to say, you know what, I'm 9-year-old kid, and I have the guts to take you on, teenage man.
Yeah, especially if it wasn't.
Teenage man. Which is a 20-something.
Well, that's what it felt like.
Yeah,
That's absolutely what it felt
exactly. It
like.
was so intimidating.
But I think back then, like, just the intimidation only played into account if it wasn't your home turf.
Yeah.
And you know, if you were fortunate enough to live near an arcade or
frequent one like we did.
Yeah, we had our home turf was on Chestnut Street. It was called Spaceport.
Okay.
We love that arcade.
Yeah.
It's long gone. But if anyone out there remembers Spaceport, best friends. But yeah, we would go there. There was a cast of characters who would come in. We didn't know anyone's real name, but we had nicknames that we used in our heads for them all the time.
You didn't actually talk to these people. These were just
We
your
talked to them
description.
enough. We talked shop with them, but we didn't know them enough to learn their names, their real names. And actually, Chris drew me in graduation in 12th grade a poster of all the people, which I still have in my house somewhere.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
What were some of the names? You got to give me at least two.
We had Wormy Guy.
Wormy Guy.
Who always, he sweated a lot. And he would always carry a paper towel or napkins and wipe off the joystick and buttons because his hand was so sweaty that he couldn't hold onto the joystick.
So he would play the game holding a paper towel around the joystick the whole time.
And I don't know if it was quite because he was germophobic or because of how much he sweat or both.
Maybe grip, yeah.
Oh, maybe grip.
But he was like this middle-aged guy, coming in. He was one of the older people who would come in.
And then there was "This is gonna suck" guy.
Yeah, every time he would actually say this. So you do a super move in Street Fighter, and it would like do the big flash up and time would freeze.
And everything, yeah.
And every time that would happen to him, he'd go, "This is gonna suck," and then he'd get hit. And he consistently said that a lot.
I mean, it was nice to have a place to go. You know?
It was great.
You had to get out in the world. That, I think, is the beauty of arcades that's kind of missing is you have no reason to leave your house anymore. Like, you have none. Like, everything you could possibly want. But back then, like, it was about, like, maintaining your turf. And it was, like, competitive and fun. But I just remember if I even saw one out of the corner of my eye, my parents knew I had to get one.
For it.
Yeah.
I had to get one game in. And eventually you get to that awesome age where it's like, we're going to go do shopping, have fun. We couldn't leave you at home for some reason, but we can leave you here.
Yep.
So in the vein of the arcade, there are some absolutely legendary games. The one that comes to mind you actually recently had here, and that's Raiden.
Yeah.
Because that was just hit the button, keep hitting the button, or hold the button and move left and right. And there were like things coming at you from every different direction. So, and you only had a limited amount of quarters. You had maybe 4 credits to go through. And it just led to a level of intensity that was sweat-inducing because you had to go home once you ran out of cash. And there's stuff coming everywhere. But the thing I loved most about that game was the power-up system. That's one of the coolest things about those classic arcade games. It rewarded you for staying alive and for doing those dances that just got you powered up. It was almost like you didn't max out. I don't know if you can max out in that game. That laser can be the size of the freaking screen by the time you're done. Yeah. But I will always have fond memories of that one. What about you guys?
Well, what was cool about that one, just an aside, was that all those upgrades, you discovered that by hearsay and by trial and error. Like, you didn't read a guide. No one told you how to do those powers. Like, there was rumors on the schoolyard about like how you would do these special moves, and it was all verbal. It was almost like, prior to the history of the written word, the GameFAQs didn't exist. You couldn't just go in GameFAQs and say, like, oh yeah, that's how the ship works. It was mystery that you were uncovering at every turn.
Yeah, that's so funny that you just said GameFAQs because I also say that. But it's game FAQs.
Well, yeah.
But I remember reading it, and that's how I said it for years and years and years and years.
You say GameFAQs, right?
Yeah, so that's what it is. Whatever happened to GameFAQs?
It's still there.
It's still around.
Yeah, it's owned by IGN now, but it's still there, and it still gets updated a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every new game, there's new guides.
I remember getting all the fatalities for Mortal Kombat on that one. Speaking of which, that was a legendary arcade game for me because if you knew a fatality, you were God in the arcade, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you were capable of doing something other than just Melina holding low kick and walking up for 4 seconds and letting go, and she, like, ate you? Right? Or blew you a kiss of death or something. Right. Yeah. But I remember she was the one that just had low kick, so I'd play with her all the time just so I could do a fatality. But if you busted out, like, a Sub-Zero fatality, the whole arcade would just, like, all the heads would turn. Just like, oh, he did it. He knows the moves and stuff like that. But
that's where EGM came in handy, Electronic Gaming Monthly.
Yeah. You got a magazine that would...
Every month for like 6 years, it was my monthly ritual. walk to the drugstore, buy my Electronic Gaming Monthly, see what new moves were out for. By the time Tekken 2 was out,
Ooh.
it was really good for that because there were lots of hidden techniques in the Tekken games and hidden combos, and they would normally list a bunch of them for different characters. So I would just be God with Heihachi. People were like, we don't know how you do that. I forget what the move was, but it was kind
he
of
in
like
a diaper at the time? Because eventually he's pretty much naked in that.
no. In 2, he was still pretty virile. He still had black hair.
Okay.
It was graying a little bit, but he had like a Hadouken style move where he didn't shoot a projectile, but if he connected with his hands, it did like half your life bar damage.
Oh, nice.
And was there a little bit of lightning around his hands too?
Yeah, the lightning and everything, all the Mishima, tricks and bells and whistles.
Tekken is one of those games, and that brings up an interesting point. There were games that were in both worlds, like at the same time, because that was on PlayStation at the same time as an arcade, but it didn't feel right on a controller. It felt better, classic,
Tapping out.
game style. And for you kids at home who don't understand what I'm talking about, well, actually, they have it at Tubby Robot where you could see a joystick and buttons that you push. And it's not with your thumbs, it's like with your fingers and your digits and stuff, and you had to get really, really good at it. But that's the way that game was meant to be played. For me, I always thought.
I feel that way about Street Fighter, like all the Street Fighters, and I originally played those on the Super Nintendo, and so that was like shoulder buttons, face buttons, and I got
worst
used to
way.
it. Right. And then when I went to the arcade, I was like, oh, this is weird, it's kind of giant, but then you get used to it because you have 3 fingers always on 3 of those buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was nice.
And the interesting thing about both those games, Street Fighter and Tekken, is even when they bring out new versions now for the home consoles, in Japan and in some places in California, they still put out physical cabinets
Oh,
of those
really?
games. Like before they're released on consoles, they're play tested by like the fighting game professionals or amateurs in those areas.
in like a cabinet set.
Yeah, and they're play tested. Like Tekken 7 was play tested for a couple years, I believe. I've been hearing about it like on and off, like not being super tuned into the community, but I've been hearing about it for a while. And they've just been play testing it and doing new revisions and shipping out new chips
It's funny
with the
that they're
console
doing that like,
until they put it out
instead of
on
like an
console.
online beta like so many other games.
Yeah, because some do online betas. They did cabinets, especially in Japan.
Cabinet
But then
betas.
also, I think it's in the Bay Area in California. They have a lot of just places where they set up arcade machines you just practice.
What's funny, a lot of the pro people who are really good at these games, online is not good enough. Like, there's too much lag. They were doing like things with frame precision, 1/60th of a second, and online you can't do that. So a lot of the pros don't play online.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you want a real competition, it
You
has
have
to be in
meet
person.
up. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's the only way to get 0 lag.
And that's part of the reason why they did the play test, because they don't want to find out that there's some kind of infinite combo possible online because they didn't test it one-to-one. Or rather in person, because online it doesn't work because of the lag. But then when you're playing one-on-one, because you don't have lag, there might have been an opening for like an infinite combo or a glitch that crashes the game.
Yeah.
So they wanted to make sure they get that in-person testing as well as online stuff. When it
Fighting
comes to
games are
consoles.
actually some of the hardest to do online, and they still aren't
That makes
really
sense,
quite
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I don't think they are either. And nothing will ever be as smooth as those games. I especially think the 2D fighters were impossibly smooth
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of their life cycle. I
Like
suppose.
Street Fighter 3 had the most gorgeous animation I still have yet to see in a 2D fighting game. It's amazing.
It's true, yeah. That whole thing, it's like a painting. I got to bring up Tekken, which I think had one of the cool things about Tekken was the cast of characters. And looking behind you, Tekken did something amazing where they had box art Mega Man 2 as a playable fighter.
Oh yeah,
Did they really? I
They
don't remember
did.
that
Yeah,
one.
Him and
it's when they-
Pac-Man
Yeah, it's
were
when they
in-
started doing the
Oh, it was versus
console
Street Fighter,
exclusives.
right? Tekken versus Street Fighter, I think he was in.
Tekken vs Street Fighter. Yeah, he's in
Oh
it.
wow.
But those crossovers were amazing. But that specifically, like, just go watch the animation, because if you know anything about Mega Man 2, that's thought of as the worst box art in history of the world. He's yellow, and in the game he's
Yellow,
blue.
and he has a gun in his hand.
has a gun.
He's got
a
a
fat
gun.
guy.
Yeah, he's everything's wrong.
So, speaking of, we were talking earlier about how there were a bunch of crossovers. My favorite arcade game was always Marvel vs. Capcom 2. If you could find that in an arcade, that was a big deal. And just being Cable all the time and using that giant gun, that was so much fun. I have so many fond memories.
That explains a lot about you.
But the big thing about it was there were an incredible amount of licenses from other forms of media, be it comic books, for the example of X-Men,
Yeah.
or movies with like Terminator games and Alien games with big guns. What are some of those amazing, legendary games that were in arcades that were based on other properties?
Well, one of my favorites, and we used to play it a lot all the time, is Jurassic Park.
Oh, yeah.
Which one? The one in the
No,
cart?
the one in the cart when you're just running around and you're shooting with your, I forget if it was a shotgun or a handgun. I think
It was a handgun.
It was a handgun, but you're shooting raptors and compies
It
and
was 2 players, you were in a
running from
dark,
T-Rexes.
small thing, and I think it was the first Jurassic Park arcade game. It was on the Sega Model 3 arcade board. I remember that specifically.
Wow.
Because
It had a curtain as well in
Yes.
case
Yeah.
you just wanted to go hook up.
Yep.
Nobody did. They were in there gaming. Like,
I mean, there's also a window in the back of the cab, so if you were hooking up, everybody could see you. But
Yeah, but that was a great game. It was one of those games where, like, it was the same every time you played through it. The bosses would come up and the targets would appear on them. It's like, these are the places you have to shoot.
yeah.
yeah, you shoot the big
It'd, like,
glowing
zoom
reticule.
in.
Yeah. But at the same time, it was very cinematic, especially if you loved Jurassic Park and Jurassic World.
Sure.
But there's a sequel game as well for the sequel. And it's just you're driving through. It's not the same plot as movies, but it's the same. You're in a dinosaur park where the dinosaurs got out.
Yeah.
but you still had
That is the first movie.
but you had the climactic fight like with the T-Rex, where it was inside of this like maze-like building for no reason. There's just a bunch of pillars, and every time you turn a corner, you think you've got away from the T-Rex. T-Rex pops out. You have to shoot in the soft palate in his mouth, so it gets away from you. And that's how you survived, is by being surprised by a dinosaur in a cart with one gun shooting. And it was wonderful.
I mean, those games on rails, like that was like I think that had to have started in the arcade, being on rails with a thing.
Yeah,
And kind of being guided through, which is what Jurassic Park was. And one of my favorite aspects of those games was the bite marks on the screen.
Yeah.
And you, like, if they showed up, you had about half a second to shoot it before you had death in your face.
Yeah.
But they would jump from in the back, and you had to have one guy. It was always better to play with 2 people because you had one guy who was hitting all the jumping stuff and the other one taking out the main thing. Those kind of games were a blast. It makes me think of House of the Dead.
I have a long history with House of the Dead. That's one we played a lot.
Really?
My old parlor trick used to be I would put in 2 credits and play double fisted. I'd play first and second player. I could beat the entire House of the Dead 1 with 1 credit each.
No way.
Yep.
He was masterful at it.
I got really good at that game.
Kids, we got to see this.
I could not do it on House of the Dead 2. It was much harder. But House of the Dead 1 I could do.
If we can find a House of the Dead and find an arcade and go back in time and get 2 guns that work, maybe. Like Dave & Buster's might have 3, but they're not going to have 1.
Yeah.
Here's what's insane. I still remember, like, the intro to that game, of that demon coming in and saying, what do you say? G's blood.
That's actually 2.
Ah, damn it.
That's 2.
But
2 is amazing. 2 has the best terrible voice acting of just about any game. We're meeting
gonna stop
G
you.
over there. Dogs of the AMS. Time they made a move. Like, incredible the whole way through.
Was it Curian was the
the
bad guy behind it?
They re-released that game so many times too. Because they brought it to consoles, and then they made it Typing of the Dead.
What?
Yeah,
on Sega Dreamcast and PC.
We're going to have an entire episode dedicated to
instead
games.
of shooting the zombies, you type the words on the zombies' heads, and they would die. And it was amazing.
Did you learn?
Yeah, you do. Well, I mean, you learned how to type faster, I guess.
There you go. Not just Mario teaches typing.
Not just.
So there was this other game, which we mentioned it a couple times, but not this specific version. There was one game that was in every arcade I ever went to. And it was unique. You always knew it was there because it was extra wide, because there were 2 monitors in there. And it was an 8-player X-Men game.
It was huge.
Like the size of, well, you can't see it, but like it was massive. But that was one of the most fun experiences ever, was when you had 8 strangers playing, maybe 6.
I think it's 6.
I think it's 6. 6 strangers.
3
Here we
per
go.
screen.
Here we go. Colossus.
Yep.
Cyclops, Nightcrawler,
Dazzler.
Wolverine, and was it Storm?
It was Storm.
Those
are the 6. Yeah. That's nerd knowledge for you, kids. But it was so much fun. Now, that was a game where you had 1 button was jump, 1 button was attack, and then 1 was mutant power.
Yes.
And you only had like 2 of those to go, but it would take out everything on the screen. And I'm pretty sure that in that game, if you hit it an extra time, it would do it, but it would cost you some life.
It cost a chunk of your life bar.
That is just wrong to do to a child who just wants to see like Nightcrawlers zip across the screen.
Yeah.
I did like only Nightcrawlers made sense. None of the other ones made sense. Like Wolverine can't shoot beams.
Storms kind of made sense.
Storms made sense.
Hey, look, so Cyclops just shot a beam and somehow hit everyone that was still outside the beam's range.
That's right. They went straight. And
Yeah,
then
Wolverine makes no
Colossus
sense
just
at all.
screamed.
Yeah, Colossus got a reflected energy off of him, which is not one of his powers.
And that was the exact tone.
But it's funny, they took that and brought it into the Versus games later.
Yeah.
That was one
No
of his
way.
moves. Yeah.
He would just go,
In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, you go, and just go up straight like a giant.
like he could fly, which he also cannot do.
Yeah, it was absurd.
But that was, like, if you get a chance, and I know they have it in certain places. Actually, if you go to Barcade in Philly, I know they have it there. Which,
Oh, they have the 2 monitor set up and everything.
yeah, they do it
Oh,
in the
yeah,
monitor. So
full
you
one,
can
yeah.
go and you can experience it, and I strongly recommend. Like, for you young kids, I think you'll really enjoy it, because it's been a while since there's been a time of, like, button mashing. And button mashing can be fun. It gets kind of a bad rap, but when you're fighting for your life and the coins that, like, and it's literally your life. When you run out of coins, you gotta go home.
And
you
that's
go
what you
into
have to do
debt.
the rest of the day.
I feel, personally, for me, it taught me fiscal responsibility.
Wow.
Yeah, because you would go and you'd be like, I have $1.
Yeah.
I need to play. I don't want to like blow it all on like some redemption game.
Yeah.
And get some garbage thing. Like I need to like think about this very analytically, and I need to fight the guy who I'm gonna win against because loser pays, winner stays.
Yeah, that's right. You had to figure out how to extend. So you had to get. I think everybody had one game that we were really good at. Like mine was definitely Marvel vs. Capcom 2, 100%.
Oh wow.
Like
Yeah.
I could step up to the challenge.
Yeah, like not to brag, ours was also Marvel vs. Capcom 2, so we're gonna have to.
Oh, no!
We're gonna have to
ourselves
throw down
a
at some
little.
point.
Yeah, we're gonna throw down. But
What were your
also,
characters?
I always played with. I'm a little bit boring. It was Ryu or Ken.
Okay.
Or
Or Ken.
Yeah, or rather Ryu or Akuma.
I'll
That's
give you
what I'll
that.
go with. And then I loved Doctor Doom. I was not great with Doctor Doom, but I
yeah.
love Doctor Doom just as a villain in general, but especially in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he brought the
Oh
bear
yeah,
was
he had those
amazing.
big lasers, man.
And then I loved
You played
Bone Wolverine.
Hulk a good amount too.
Yeah, Hulk was one of my holdovers for Marvel's Superheroes versus Street Fighter.
You just blew my
but
world.
Bone Wolverine
What
was.
do you mean Bone Wolverine?
So there are
the
two
difference
Wolverine
between the
Marvel
short
Capcom
claws and
too.
the long
Yeah,
claws?
yeah, there was the short adamantium claws and then the long bone claws from the period when his claws, when Magneto ripped all the adamantium off of his bones.
They had them both.
I didn't realize that
And-
was Bone.
Yeah, so
This is amazing. But I was always like, why are there two Wolverines in this game?
Yeah, so Bone Wolverine, he took different amounts of damage. He dealt different amounts of damage, and one of his moves was different. One of his super moves.
I think
Berserker Barrage.
he was more of a glass cannon sort of
Yeah,
character.
yeah.
Like he did more damage, but you could hurt him a lot.
Yeah, and it was comic canon accurate too, because when he had the animagium removed, his healing factor went into overdrive because it
Oh,
was
that's
no
right.
longer fighting the adamantium poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
So he would regenerate his lost red health. Like when you get hit in that game, you get red health that can come back when you're switched out. He would regenerate that super fast when he switched out.
So good.
But then when he took extra damage because he wasn't invulnerable anymore. So that was kind of the trade-off from the adamantium claw Wolverine. Yeah.
Maybe you guys actually know the answer to this, because I've wanted this forever. What the hell is turbo mode versus normal mode?
So turbo mode, they just increased the clock speed, so everything moves faster. That's all it is.
But some arcades had the game tuned to already be pretty fast.
Yes.
So turbo was like going from 9 to 10 instead of 2 to 10, which is probably the
And
intended information.
if you go back, we were playing the original Street Fighter recently, and you go back and you're like, it's a very methodical game. It's slow. Like when you're used to the versus games, like, but they introduced turbo, and then it's like, oh my god, it's much faster, and then hyper turbo, and then it just goes crazy from there on in. But yeah, turbo was always the game moved faster, so everyone had to go quicker.
There's one other big game that comes from a license that I'd really like to talk about, because I really don't know anyone who has said a bad thing about this game. If you can play it in a non-credit, that's like in the style you just said, that's not
like free
credit-based
play,
where you can just free play, it's a blast. But good luck getting on it, because there's always someone on it. I'm talking about, of course, the 4-player beat-em-up game, The Simpsons.
Yes.
This is one of the best games I've ever seen, and it sticks with so many of us to this day. It came out in the 90s.
Yeah, it was amazing. Like I go back now, and I've been playing that a lot recently, actually. Just going back to remember it. The art in that game, I love the art in that game. They took the Simpsons style and pixelized it perfectly. It's so good. The colors pop. Like when I think of a '90s arcade game, like that comes to mind. Like the animation it just draws you to it. Like it's a magnet.
The sound bites that they selected to from the show were spot on. They were digitized in the best way possible.
Yeah, they were just scratchy enough to be like, this is an old janky video game, but they got that feeling across.
Don't have a cow, man.
Would you say they were itchy and scratchy?
I would both. But that game's great.
Speaking of the animations, I distinctly remember when you put in a quarter, they came in as a superhero.
Yes.
And it was like, like I think was the noise, but they came in as a superhero, and I believe they could knock out an enemy on their way in.
Nice.
When they died, devils.
Yeah, the Bart Devil would come out.
Yeah, the Bart Devil would come. And the interesting thing about that game is they had a lot about Matt Groening in there, because what happened when you killed a person? It was revealed to be a bunny, right?
Yeah, well, some of them. Yeah.
Some of them were revealed to be one-eared rabbits,
Life in
which
Hell
are from
bunnies,
Life
yeah.
in Hell.
Yeah, especially in the second level, Krusty Land, they had the Life in Hell bunnies come out, and you would beat them up, and actually you would find out that they were just mascots. The mask would fall off some of them, but some of them it wouldn't. So it was like,
oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, let's see if we can do this. What were the weapons? I remember Marge had a
vacuum cleaner. And she had the largest range with the vacuum cleaner. She was always my go-to character because I like characters with range.
She was the Donatello of the group.
Of the group.
Homer just punched people. That's all he had, no weapon.
Right.
His Fist of Fury.
Bart had his skateboard.
Yep.
And Lisa had jump rope. The jump rope was awesome, actually.
Yeah.
Oddly, not a saxophone.
Not a saxophone.
But a jump rope. That's interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of those games were very similar. Like, I think Double Dragon, was that the start of those?
No, Double Dragon was a little bit different. That was actually more in the vein of the later, like, all the Konami beat-em-ups, like the Ninja Turtles ones.
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles,
oh
first
my
arcade
God,
game.
that's another wonderful
Yeah, like,
one.
it's
Turtles
the same
in
vein.
Time.
And Turtles in Time, the sequel to it, they were kind of based on that same engine, that same art style.
Same company, too.
Yeah, it was all Konami.
Mostly Konami, yeah.
They were really good.
If you can get your hands on that Simpsons game. And you know what's great about it? It's long.
It's pretty long.
Yeah.
There's a lot to go through. Like, if you ever got to the end, you know, this is interesting. So this is an arcade thing. One of the coolest things about arcades was that just because you died and you were done didn't mean the game stopped.
Right.
Someone could come in and take your place and eventually get to the end. So you might loop back to see how everyone's doing and to see where they were. Because if you got to the end and saw Mr. Burns, you know, like, some serious coin was spent to get there. Like, to get to the end of that game, I'll bet it cost people at least $100.
No, not that
I don't
much.
think it was that long.
I sat down, I know as a
Probably
kid.
$50.
One day I sat down as a kid, I had $10, and we played through. We got to Mr. Burns. We did not beat it, but we got to Mr. Burns.
Nice.
How many of you were there?
2 of us. Yeah, me and my sister.
Wow.
That game also had team-up attacks, if you remember, and there was a unique one for each pairing. It was cool.
All right, can you do it? Do you know them?
So, only some of them. Bart and Lisa would lock their arms and start yelling, and just run around hitting people. Yeah. That's actually the one I remember really clearly. There's a lot of, like,
did Homer and
secrets.
Marge dance or, like, do a tango or something? I don't know. I feel like somebody spun.
The thing is, I always chose one of the kids because I was like, I don't want to be the lame adults. But I should have, because Marge was apparently incredible.
Yeah?
I always min-max as much as possible in an arcade game, especially because I was like, I only have limited numbers of quarters.
Yeah.
I'm going to play as Marge because she has the longest range. I'm going to play as Donatello.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to play as Ryu in Street Fighter for any versus game because I knew Ryu to a T.
Yeah.
So I knew at the very least if I played Ryu, I could beat whoever I was up against.
Man.
And the same thing in Virtual On.
We have to talk about this. We have to talk about this.
Since we were talking about games that we were really good at, and I didn't get a chance to say it earlier. So Virtual On was the game where I would run the whole arcade. I would walk. I was in my heyday. I would walk in and people would say, "Oh no, that guy's here." And I sit down, put down my 50 cents.
And how old were you?
I was like 14, 13, 14. I would
running
put my 50 cents down. Whoever's playing, they would finish up the match. I would play next. I would play. I think his name was Raiden.
Yeah.
I love anything related to Raiden. So he had shoulder cannons. And his super move was he shot 4 shoulder cannons with instant kill just about everybody.
Now, this was a different game than a traditional 2D side-scroller.
Yeah,
First of all, why don't you describe the cabinet? Because it was different.
Certainly. So the cabinet, instead of having one joystick and 4 or 6 buttons, it was a dual joystick like tank-style game where you sat in a seat that vibrated or even shifted as you moved left to right, which the deluxe cabinet at
Depending
Spaceport
how
did.
fancy it was.
Yeah, Spaceport had the deluxe one. So you sat down, you moved left, and it shifts left, shifts right. You have speakers behind your head, so you hear sounds in stereo. And yeah, you pull the joysticks apart and you jump.
Yeah.
You put them together and you crouch down. But it was like a 3D like robot arena fighting game. So it was 1-on-1. And I would once sat down and played.
Where was your opponent?
Your opponent was.
Because I don't think they were next to you, right? Weren't they on the other side?
So it was a circular 3D arena. So it was you had the free reign of the entire
it depends.
Person. I mean,
so it depends where they put it. Like it was just
the
two
person.
cabinets.
Yeah, the person usually sat next to you. Or at least the ones we saw.
Yeah.
It
You
was
could sit
two people sat
I
on the side.
think the one I played was like
Was
this,
like
so you
head to
couldn't
head?
see
Oh,
the
that's
other
Head
one.
to head seems kind of interesting. I haven't seen that.
There wasn't room for that in Spaceport. But,
Yeah, they had
that's
side to
probably
side.
why.
But yeah, and my best achievement was 8 hours on 50 cents.
You played
just taking cover upon cover.
You played 8 hours at Spaceport.
I got there at 12 noon, put down my quarters, and then after I beat the first couple people, I was just playing the computer, and then people would come in every like 5 minutes before
How
I
would
finished
you
story
play
mode.
the computer for 8 hours?
No, because I wouldn't finish story mode. Somebody would put in quarters, and then it starts you over on story mode when that's done.
So for 8 hours, he just beat all comers.
I beat all comers, and then at about 4
Wow.
o'clock, that's when like people started bringing their friends in. Like, you need to beat this guy in Virtual On. He's been here since 12. So then there was just a line, and from 4 to 8 until I had to go home, I was just person after person. And this one guy put $10. It was 50 cents a play, but he put $10 in playing me, and then he tried to get more change. And the guy at the arcade was like, I don't have any more change to give you to watch you get destroyed by this kid anymore.
Oh my god!
But
lethal.
he was putting quarter after quarter, and I was giving a good show too. Like, I wasn't being cheap, but every time he left an opening, I'd hit him with Raiden's super, which is 4 giant lasers, take off 3/4 of your health. Every time he just left himself open for it. He's like, next time I'm going to pick this bot and do this. There was one that did poison attacks, so she would like give poison to you. Yeah, the pink one. She would poison you, and it takes down your health. He was like, okay, I'm going to take down your health and then play keep away. And I would just wait for the perfect time, and as soon as he got right in the middle of my crosshairs and my weapons were charged, every time it was amazing.
That was the best day of your life. Like one of those best days.
The best gaming day of my life by far. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me sad that other people aren't going to be able to enjoy being the king of the ring, essentially, that you had. I mean, that was a beautiful part of it, because it's like you couldn't just join a different group of people to play with, like you can in like a Call of Duty or something like that. Someone had to take him down.
Yeah.
Or someone had to make him
Or else you couldn't play that game again.
Right. And you would spend, and if, like, I distinctly remember being in that guy's shoes where it's like, I came to the arcade to play that game, and there was just
some Steve sitting there.
Steve sitting there just leveling you. And I mean, there's something, like when you have to like let go of joysticks like that and you're like shaking because you've lost, it's like being blown up. Like,
Yeah.
Imagine.
It's visceral. Yeah, like your adrenaline is pumping, and you have that fight or flight response, and then when it's over, you're drained, and you're just like, I need a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
Or a cookie or something that you eat at an arcade, because you had to have a hand free to start that game whenever you were up at bat.
It felt like a sport. Like there were times where it felt that competitive, like you wanted to kill the person standing next to you because they're literally taking money out of your pocket.
It's funny. I think I wish I could go back with the mentality I have now, because back then there was a whole big thing with kids. Like, you're picking a cheap character. You're doing cheap moves. But you know what? That's a loser mentality. I've been reading about this. There's a bunch of like pro gamer books about this. They're just like, no, you do what works, and if it works, you win, and you just keep winning, and you win at all costs. And it, like, that cheapness mentality keeps you back from your full potential.
Wow. I distinctly remember I was at a wedding, I feel like in like Aspen, Colorado or something like that. And I remember this kid, young kid. Like, I was cool, so I was 10. That's probably where I hit my peak. But this kid had to be 7 and just low kick, low kick, low kick, low kick, low kick. Could not defeat him. I had to just walk away and leave because, like, the character he was using, when it did a low kick, it came underneath like a fireball.
Oh, yeah.
So I couldn't hit him from across. I had to get there. It's just low kick, low kick, low kick. That is cheap.
There's a very easy counter to that. We were just too dumb to do it.
Yeah, it's true.
I remember, like, it was Dawson, if you did a low kick, he would slide. And Bison would do the same thing. And, like, Dawson got on the ground when he slid. So, a lot of people just what do? He just keeps sliding. But if you're good, you do a low block and you throw him. And throws are devastating in that game.
Yeah, it's like third of a life bar.
So if you know what you're doing, if you learn it and you get out of that mentality, you can counter it. If it's a good game.
Yeah,
It's true.
If it's a bad game, it sucks.
Well, we got to wrap this up, but there is a safe space, I suppose, if you're in the Manioc area or in Philadelphia, to potentially get an arcade experience. Where is that place, boys?
That is Tubby Robot. It's at 4369 Main Street in Philadelphia. And check our website, tubbyrobot.com. It tells you what game we're playing every week, and we change it pretty regularly. We hope to have some more competitive games out. We hope in the future to be doing some tournaments. We would love to do that. Maybe get some free ice cream if you win. Yeah. So that's where you go.
Yeah, so this has been another episode of Tubby Talk. We want to hear from you. We really do. So tell us your arcade memories in the comments. Tell us different arcade games that we missed or that we should talk about. I know we spent a lot of time on fighters and on side-scroller beat-em-ups, and those are the games that I care about the most. But if you have some of those other games that are just classics that we should play, let us know.
Yeah. NFL Blitz was one of those I would play every time I was in the arcade. It was a diversion from my Street Fighter and my Virtual On, but it was a fun diversion. I love that game.
Midway made some great arcade games,
Yes.
by the way. Responsible for Mortal Kombat. Do you remember the game? Sorry, we are wrapping up. We can go on about this for hours, but does anyone remember the Midway game that had like Spawn and Sub-Zero in it and like 900 other?
It was a 3D fighter.
I don't remember that.
It was like the
a
first
3D arena.
It's like 3D.
More like Quake.
Oh, yes, I do remember that game. Yes,
Yeah.
It was a precursor to the Grid.
Oh, we love the Grid.
We can talk about that in a whole episode later, but yeah.
Thanks for stopping by, guys. We will see you next time. Peace. Keep gaming.